The Arctic in December is a white hell. There is no light, only absolute darkness interrupted by flashes of artillery. It is there, in that frozen desert of water and ice, that one of the most epic naval battles of World War II would unfold. The Scharnhorst was not just a ship, it was a symbol. It was the German legend that had terrorized the seas for years. Fast, deadly, practically invincible. The British had pursued it for months, through storms, through cold that froze bones, through nights so dark that men couldn't see their own feet. But they knew it was there. They knew it had to be stopped. Because while the Scharnhorst sailed, no convoy was safe. No life was guaranteed. No hope could flourish. The Royal British Navy had a mission: find the German ship and send it to the bottom of the ocean. It was not just a military matter. It was a matter of honor. It was the assertion that freedom still had defenders, that evil, however powerful it seemed, could be defeated, that ordinary men in steel ships could do extraordinary things when they believed it mattered. The night of December 26, 1943, began like so many others in the Arctic. Cold, silent, deadly. British sailors were at their posts, knowing that at any moment the enemy could appear. They had trained for it, they had dreamed of it, they had prayed for it. And now, when it finally came, there was something different in the air. A tension that was not just fear, it was determination. It was the certainty that that night would change everything. The Scharnhorst appeared on radar like a ghost, fast, coming from the north. The British knew they had only one chance, one opportunity to intercept it before it disappeared again into the darkness. The British ships began to move. HMS Duke of York, the flagship, led the formation. At its side, cruisers and destroyers. Men who knew they could die that night, men who accepted that risk because they understood that there were things greater than their own lives. Freedom was one of them. Democracy was another. The chance of a better future for their children was perhaps the greatest of all. The first contact was devastating. The British opened fire with everything they had. The Scharnhorst responded with the same ferocity. It was a duel of titans amid ice and darkness. Projectiles crossed the night like meteors. Explosions lit up the Arctic sky like infernal fireworks. British sailors saw their companions falling. They saw fire consuming parts of the ship. They saw death around them, but they didn't stop. They didn't retreat, because they knew that if they stopped, if they retreated, the Scharnhorst would escape. And if it escaped, more lives would be lost. More convoys would be attacked. More families would lose their sons. So they kept fighting. They kept firing. They kept believing that victory was possible. A British sailor years later would describe that moment. "I didn't think of myself. I thought of my mother at home. I thought that if we didn't stop that ship, it could attack England. It could kill people I loved. So I kept firing, I kept fighting, because it mattered." The Scharnhorst was fast, but it was not invincible. The British had surrounded the German ship. They had cut off its escape routes. They had concentrated all their firepower on a single target, and the target was beginning to give way. Not quickly, not easily, but it was giving way. The German ship began to slow down. It began to lose altitude in the water. The British saw the opportunity and attacked with even more ferocity. Shot after shot, explosion after explosion. The Scharnhorst was burning, it was sinking, but it still fought, it still fired, it still refused to die. There was something almost tragic about it. A ship that had been a symbol of power, of Nazi arrogance, of domination, was now just a burning hull fighting for survival. The German sailors aboard knew it was over. They knew they were going to die. But still, they remained at their posts. Still, they kept fighting, because it was all they had left. It was the last chance for honor, the last chance for meaning. The end came quickly. The Scharnhorst, damaged too much, burning too much, simply could not float anymore. It began to sink, slowly at first, then faster and faster. German sailors saw water invading the compartments. They saw the ship tilting. They saw the end approaching. Some tried to jump into the freezing water. Some prayed. Some simply remained at their posts, accepting their fate. The Scharnhorst disappeared into the depths of the Arctic on December 26, 1943. It took with it more than 1,100 German sailors. It took with it a legend. It took with it the illusion that the Third Reich was invincible. The British had won. But it was not a victory that brought joy. It was a victory that brought relief. Relief that the threat had been neutralized. Relief that more lives could be saved. Relief that freedom had one more chance. The British sailors who witnessed that battle never forgot. They spent the rest of their lives carrying that memory. Some developed nightmares. Some never managed to return to the sea. Some simply lived in silence, keeping that experience as a private treasure. But they all knew one thing. They had made a difference. They had participated in something historic. They had helped change the course of the war. They had defended freedom when it needed it most. There was a British sailor named Jack Foreman who was aboard HMS Duke of York that night. He was only 19 years old. He had left a girlfriend at home. He had dreams of peace, of marriage, of a normal life. But that night, he was at his post, firing at the Scharnhorst, knowing he could die. He survived. He went home, he married his girlfriend, he had children and grandchildren. And until the day of his death at age 92, he never forgot that night in the Arctic. He never forgot the sound of the explosions. He never forgot the cold that penetrated to the bone. He never forgot that it mattered, that his courage had meaning, that he had helped save the world. The Battle of the North Cape was not just a military victory. It was an assertion that democracy could win. That ordinary men, when facing absolute evil, can be extraordinary. That freedom has defenders willing to pay any price. The British paid that price. They paid in blood, in lives, in innocence. But they ensured that more convoys arrived safely, that more lives were saved. That hope had a future. That is the true essence of patriotism. It is not arrogance. It is not supremacy. It is the recognition that there are values greater than one's own life. That there are moments when ordinary men are called to do extraordinary things. And when they are called, when they face absolute evil, when they know that the future depends on them, they respond, they fight, they sacrifice, because they know it matters. The Scharnhorst now rests at the bottom of the Arctic, a monument to the power that was broken, a reminder that no empire, however powerful it seems, is invincible. The sailors who died that night, both British and German, died for a cause. The British died defending freedom. The Germans died serving a regime that had deceived them, but they all died as sailors, with courage, with honor, with the certainty that they had done their duty. And that somehow makes that night sacred. It makes that battle more than just a military victory. It makes it a moment when humanity chose the right side, when democracy won, when freedom prevailed. When you look at the history of World War II, when you understand what really happened in that period, you realize something profound. Victory was not guaranteed. It could have been different. The Scharnhorst could have escaped. More convoys could have been attacked. More lives could have been lost, but it wasn't. Because there were men willing to fight, willing to die, willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. The British who faced the Scharnhorst that Arctic night were those men. They were ordinary sailors who did extraordinary things. They were patriots who understood that there were things greater than themselves. They were defenders of freedom who were willing to pay any price. And because they were willing, because they answered the call, because they fought with courage and determination, the world was saved. Democracy survived. Freedom had a future. And that is the true lesson of the Battle of the North Cape. It is not about military power. It is about human courage. It is about the willingness to sacrifice oneself for freedom. It is about ordinary men who, when facing absolute evil, discover they are capable of extraordinary things. It is about patriotism in its purest sense, not as arrogance but as love for freedom and willingness to defend it at any cost. The night of December 26, 1943, ended with the Scharnhorst at the bottom of the ocean. It ended with British victory. It ended with the assertion that freedom could win. But it began something new. It began the understanding that the war was coming to an end, that victory was possible, that the future could be better. The British sailors who fought that night went home. They returned to their families. They returned to their lives. But they were never completely the same. They carried with them the memory of that night, the memory that they had mattered, that their courage had meaning, that they had helped change the course of history. And that, for many of them, was enough. It was what kept them alive in the years that followed. The memory that they had done the right thing, that they had defended freedom, that they had been patriots in the truest sense of the word. That is the story of the Battle of the North Cape. It is not just military history, it is human history. It is the story of ordinary men who did extraordinary things. It is the story of patriotism. It is the story of how freedom wins when there are people willing to defend it. And it is a story that must be told. It must be remembered. It must be honored. Because it is the story of who we are. It is the story of a people who believe in freedom and are willing to pay any price to defend it.